Welcome back to the Deep Dive. There's something truly incredible about the human spirit, isn't there? That innate drive to build, to solve, to innovate, even when the odds are stacked impossibly high.
It really is. It's a force that seems to shine brightest when faced with the biggest challenges.
It's the very essence of resilience, turning immense pressure into a crucible for ingenuity.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. This is our 11th deep dive into the fascinating world of the digital diaspora, how digital connections and, entrepreneurial spirit bridge divides and reshape economies.
It's so crucial, we believe, to really understand the ground-level realities that shape innovation, especially in parts of the world often overlooked.
Exactly. Each digital diaspora story we've explored has illuminated how these global connections intersect with very specific local conditions, creating, unique challenges and sometimes surprising opportunities.
Yeah, the local context is everything.
So today, our focus is laser sharp. We're diving deep into the dynamic, incredibly resilient, yet often overlooked world of startups in Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
You might recall our previous deep dive, our 10th one, where we peeled back the layers on marketing strategies in Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the power of Facebook groups, the magic of micro-influencers, even how effective things like physical flyers can still be.
I remember that well. Fascinating stuff.
Well, today, we're going to see how those strategies are not just, good ideas, but are deeply, fundamentally intertwined with the practicalities of actually launching and sustaining a business in such a complex environment.
That's the critical connection, isn't it? Understanding how to reach a customer is one thing, but understanding the full journey from a nascent idea to an operational business, especially in a country like Sudan, well, that provides the essential context.
Exactly. It makes those marketing efforts truly meaningful. Our mission today is to pull back the curtain on the entire startup ecosystem in Sudan.
The whole picture.
We're talking about everything from navigating complex regulations to fostering a truly resilient entrepreneurial culture and, crucially, the dramatic, heartbreaking shifts that have happened due to recent conflict. We'll unpack the unique challenges, some truly surprising solutions, and the incredibly inspiring stories emerging from this vibrant scene.
Okay, let's get into it.
Where do we even begin? The context feels so vital here.
What's truly foundational here is Sudan's unique context. It's a nation with a long, complex history of political instability and deep-seated economic and social conflicts.
Right.
And the economic shock after the 2011 secession, when Sudan lost, three-quarters of its oil revenues to South Sudan, that profoundly shaped its business environment.
Huge impact, I meant.
Massive. These factors have paradoxically created an incredibly difficult yet fertile ground for entrepreneurship, where necessity isn't just the mother of invention, it's often the only mother.
So when we hear startup, our minds often jump to Silicon Valley, right? Tech-driven, VC-hungry entities. But what does that word even mean in the context of Sudan, with all its unique challenges? Is it different?
That's an excellent question, and it's important to define. For our deep dive, a startup in Sudan refers to early-stage companies, typically operating for, say, 2 years or less.
Okay, early stage.
Yeah, and their defining characteristics aren't just about size, but about having a repeatable, scalable business model designed to tackle real social problems. These are ventures that, as they grow, access various financing mechanisms, from personal savings to friends and family, maybe sometimes more formalized loans. And crucially, they generate employment opportunities.
So it's not just about being small, it's the potential for growth and, significantly, that focus on solving community problems. That feels key.
It is, and that's a key distinction from traditional small and medium enterprises, or SMEs. Now, SMEs are undeniably vital. They provide over 70% of jobs in Sudan.
Oh, 70%.
A huge number. But they tend to focus more on their current size and stability, less on that ambitious scalability factor that defines a startup.
Got it. So connecting this to the bigger picture,
Right.
what are the main hurdles these startups face? You mentioned the difficult environment.
Precisely. And if we look at the overarching obstacles for entrepreneurs in Sudan, they are formidable. We're talking fragmented legal systems that can feel like a labyrinth, sometimes failed policies that hinder rather than help, extremely low access to formal finance.
The money problem again.
Always. Plus, a workforce that often lacks the specific skills needed for these new kinds of ventures, and just generally insufficient support infrastructure. Now, the ecosystem is nascent, but it is gradually expanding, especially within Khartoum. However, it still lags behind more mature scenes, like maybe Uganda, largely due to Sudan's more complex, often unpredictable business environment and, frankly, lower levels of digitization overall.
Okay, let's unpack that complex business environment. What does that actually look like for a founder on the ground?
Yeah.
Let's dive into the gauntlet of hurdles, maybe starting with something really basic, like just getting registered.
Right, registration. The realities there are quite stark, and it's a real systemic hurdle. Get this. About half of surveyed firms in Sudan are operating completely unregistered.
Half.
Seriously, half. Though, interestingly, a significant majority, 71% of those unregistered firms, actually intend to register eventually. They want to be formal.
So what stops them?
Well, the primary reasons boil down to two main things. A significant knowledge gap about the process itself, like where do I even go, what forms do I need, and costs that can feel prohibitively high.
How high are we talking?
Well, for example, lawyers often charge over 10 times the official government fees, which might be around, say, 3,502 Sudanese pounds.
10 times the official fee. That's a massive, immediate barrier for a new business with basically no capital.
Exactly. It sounds like a problem of access and transparency, not just the fee itself. It absolutely is. It's a significant financial gatekeeper, pushing many into the informal sector just because they can't navigate or afford the formal entry point.
And is this the same everywhere in Sudan?
No, there's a clear disparity. Khartoum, being the capital, has notably higher knowledge about the process and higher registration rates compared to other states.
Okay.
And you have to add to this the recent history. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, registering a business name averaged around maybe 3 weeks. Not too bad.
Manageable.
Yeah. But post-pandemic, that time ballooned dramatically. We're talking up to 3 months sometimes.
3 months. Why the jump?
Due to staff changes in government offices, lack of internal resources, even strikes. So these bureaucratic hurdles become moving targets in an already challenging environment. You just can't predict how long it will take.
Okay, so registration is hurdle number one. Let's say you manage to jump through those hoops, or you decide to operate informally for a while. What about taxes? I can almost picture the piles of paperwork. Sounds like a job in itself just to comply.
You're not far off. Indirect taxes, things like customs duties, excises, and VAT, value-added tax, are the main revenue sources for the government. But the system suffers from, well, too many rates, frequent changes to those rates, and multiple currency practices being used, making them a significant obstacle.
How much of an obstacle? Like, how much time does it take?
Firms, on average, spend a staggering 23 days, that's work days, or about 180 hours, annually just on tax compliance.
23 days. That's nearly a full month of work every single year.
Yep. And on top of that, they're making, on average, 42 separate tax payments throughout the year.
42 payments. The administrative burden alone sounds like it could sink a small team.
It really speaks to the sheer weight of bureaucracy. And what's even more striking, perhaps because of this complexity, is that over 45% of respondents admitted they do not pay taxes, even if their businesses are profitable.
Whoa, nearly half aren't paying taxes. Why not? Is it just defiance or?
The main reasons cited were a profound lack of clarity on tax breakdowns and the processes involved. People genuinely don't understand what they owe or how to pay it properly. And that's compounded by issues like potential VAT duplication and local fees being collected by authorities without any corresponding services being rendered.
Ah, so a trust issue, too. Paying fees but getting nothing back.
Exactly. It's created a fundamental breakdown of trust between businesses and the authorities, crippling a vital revenue source for the ecosystem and pushing more activity underground.
Okay, so it's hard to get registered. Taxes are a nightmare. What about funding? The lifeblood of any startup. Is it just as difficult to get the capital you need to actually grow these ventures?
Access to finance is indeed severely limited, and this is where the challenges really compound. Despite Sudan having, on paper, 37 banks and various non-bank financial institutions, the capital market is quite restricted in practice.
How so?
Well, even with the Central Bank of Sudan having a policy directive to allocate 12% of bank portfolios specifically to small businesses.
Okay, that sounds promising.
It does, but the actual financing provided only represents about 5% of banks' overall portfolio. So there's a big gap between the policy intention and the reality on the ground.
So the intention is there, but the execution isn't quite reaching the target. That's a familiar challenge in many nascent markets. but in Sudan it sounds particularly acute.
It is, and it's reflected in who even has basic banking access. Only about 59.7% of businesses surveyed have bank accounts at all.
Only just over half.
Yeah, and that figure drops significantly down to around 30% if you look outside the capital, Khartoum.
Wow. So if formal banking is hard to access, where do entrepreneurs get their initial funding?
The overwhelmingly first source of external financing, the place they turn to first, is family and friends.
Right. The friends, family, and fools round, as they say.
Exactly. And while this shows incredible community and family support, which is vital, it inherently limits opportunities for those from disadvantaged backgrounds who may not have access to such personal networks.
Makes sense. You need a network with capital to tap into it.
Precisely. Although, to be fair, when businesses do manage to access funding from commercial banks or non-bank institutions, those institutions tend to provide higher investment amounts than family and friends typically can. But getting that access is the key bottleneck.
Okay, if we broaden our view a bit, beyond the immediate business environment of registration, taxes, funding, who are the key players trying to make a difference for these startups? Who's trying to build that support system?
Right, the ecosystem actors. They generally fall into a few categories. You have the non-financial support systems, think incubators, accelerators, mentorship programs. Then there's financial support, obviously. Human capital providers, like universities and training centers. Market enablers, maybe platforms or associations. And of course, policymakers.
And what's the state of this ecosystem in Sudan?
The Sudanese entrepreneurial ecosystem is undeniably nascent, but it is growing, slowly. It's characterized by a pretty limited number of early-stage startups overall. And a key feature is a low density of connections, both nationally and globally.
What does low density of connections mean practically?
It means it's harder for entrepreneurs to access vital knowledge, find mentors, connect with potential partners, or reach international markets or investors. For example, private early-stage finance, like angel investment or seed funds. It's almost non-existent in the financial pipeline, which remains largely underdeveloped.
So even with these emerging support organizations, these ESOs you mentioned, there are still significant gaps. Where do they primarily focus their efforts and what's missing?
That's a key point. While many entrepreneurship support organizations, or ESOs, have emerged, which is positive, they primarily focus on very early stage development, helping with ideation, business plans, maybe some initial training.
The starting blocks.
Exactly. Far fewer are equipped or focused on supporting acceleration and actual growth beyond that initial phase. And crucially, studies point to a noted lack of collaboration among these different actors.
So they're working in silos.
Pretty much. It leads to isolated communities rather than a cohesive, connected network where resources and knowledge can flow freely. Despite this fragmentation, the existing hubs like incubators and co-working spaces remain really key drivers of entrepreneurship, acting as vital gathering points for the limited network that exists.
Okay, let's talk about the human capital side of things, the people, the talent pool. If businesses are struggling to find financing, are they also struggling to find the right people with the right skills?
That's a significant conundrum, yes. Sudan faces a challenge of low worker productivity overall. And there's this paradox where you have highly skilled labor, maybe university graduates, who often don't contribute effectively to the formal economy. This can be due to inadequate policies that would otherwise integrate them into productive sectors, or maybe just a lack of appealing opportunities.
And what about the education system itself? Is it producing graduates ready for startup life?
Well, university student numbers have surged dramatically since the 1990s, so the quantity is there. But entrepreneurship education specifically is still very much developing. Some universities have only recently introduced compulsory entrepreneurship modules.
Only recently.
Yeah, indicating a shift, which is good, but there's a long way to go to really align the educational output with actual market needs and the demands of building these innovative businesses.
It sounds like there are some positive signs, though, maybe from government or international support trying to push things forward.
Yes, there are definitely efforts underway. Some government agencies have started initiatives aimed at attracting attention to the socioeconomic value of entrepreneurship. Things like promoting an enterprise culture within higher education or collaborating on programs like Global Entrepreneurship Week to raise visibility.
Small steps.
Small but important steps. And you really can't overstate the vital role of international agencies. Organizations like JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, for instance, provide absolutely crucial financial inflow and expertise that help stimulate entrepreneurial activities in Sudan. They bring resources and knowledge that are often scarce locally.
That international connection seems critical then. So Given all these challenges, the bureaucracy, the funding gaps, the developing support systems, how does Sudanese society itself view all of this? Is entrepreneurship seen as a viable path, a respectable career, or is it more of a, last resort?
That's a fascinating aspect, the cultural view. Surveys show that around 80% of respondents actually view entrepreneurship as an acceptable career option.
80%.
It's
Quite positive.
It is, on the surface. However, what's truly noteworthy and acts as a significant blocker is the pervasive concern around risk aversion. A striking 34.7%, over a third of surveyed individuals, admitted that the fear of failure prevents them from starting a business, even if they believe they possess the necessary skills and knowledge.
Wow, over a third are held back by fear, even if they feel capable. That's huge. That fear must stifle so much potential innovation before it even starts.
Exactly. This risk aversion often leads to a pattern of imitation rather than fostering true, groundbreaking innovation. People understandably prefer to replicate existing successful ventures, maybe opening another shop, like one that's doing well, rather than venturing into something entirely new and potentially risky, even if that new thing could solve a bigger problem or create more value. It leads to market saturation in some areas.
That makes sense, playing it safe. What about women entrepreneurs? Are there specific societal barriers they face that are perhaps unique or just more pronounced in the Sudanese context?
Unfortunately, yes, there are additional hurdles. While women constitute a significant portion of the workforce, in some areas, maybe around 40% in places like El Janina, they frequently work in the informal sector. This often means less capital, fewer formal protections, and less visibility.
Right.
Meanwhile, men tend to dominate the higher status jobs in the formal business sectors. However, the study did indicate a slow but measurable diminishing of these social stigmas over time.
So some progress, but slow.
An encouraging trend, suggesting a gradual shift in perceptions, but the barriers are still very real.
And thinking about inclusion more broadly beyond gender, is the entrepreneurial scene generally seen as open to everyone, regardless of ethnic background, social status, or age?
The findings suggest a generally positive outlook on broader inclusion, actually. About 83.7% believe entrepreneurial activity is not reserved for specific ethnic, social, religious, or age groups. So the perception is quite open.
That's good to hear.
However, and this is a crucial however, the study also highlights the extra obstacles faced by refugees and internally displaced persons, IDPs. A significant portion of respondents, around 36%, indicated it's only to some extent possible for these groups to start a business.
So the perception is open, but the reality has friction for vulnerable groups.
Exactly. It underscores that while the market can be theoretically open, systemic barriers and practical difficulties still exist for vulnerable populations, even though there are examples of refugees and IDPs having significant purchasing power and even establishing their own markets within camps. Access remains unequal.
Okay, that gives us a really solid, quite nuanced understanding of the landscape, the hurdles, the players, the culture. Now let's get really practical. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur listening to this, thinking about starting something in Sudan right now, navigating this complex environment, what's a real-world guide to actually launching and growing? This feels like where our previous deep dive on marketing really connects.
Indeed. The first and arguably most crucial step is a problem-first approach. Forget fancy tech for its own sake. Successful startups in Sudan are almost always those that identify and solve real, urgent, local problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Anything from gaps in healthcare access to unreliable transportation to the need for better digital education tools. You need to deeply understand the everyday pain points of the people you're trying to serve. It has to be relevant to their daily lives.
So it's not about inventing something cool, it's about making daily life genuinely better, solving a tangible issue. Okay, you've identified a problem. How do you test your solution without breaking the bank, especially when capital is so scarce?
Lean validation is absolutely key. Before you pour in significant time, or more likely your own savings, you must validate your idea with minimal cost. A minimum viable product, an MVP in Sudan, might look very different from Silicon Valley. It might be as simple as a dedicated WhatsApp group or a Telegram channel offering a basic version of your service.
Really, just using existing chat apps.
Absolutely. Then you test and get feedback using platforms like Facebook, which, as we discussed in the marketing deep dive, is incredibly powerful for reaching people, getting reactions, and even making initial sales. Don't overbuild, start lean, test fast, iterate based on that feedback.
That makes perfect sense. Adaptability from day one. And after the idea, you need the people. Building a trustworthy team sounds like a particular challenge, especially with migration and brain drain you mentioned earlier.
It is a challenge. Finding skilled talent can be tricky, but you can leverage local resources, tap into local universities, look at graduates from coding boot camps if they exist, and rely heavily on personal referrals and networks. The focus shouldn't just be on finding someone with an impressive resume, maybe from abroad. It needs to be on building a team with a truly shared vision, complementary skills that fit the unique needs and constraints of a Sudanese startup. Trust and commitment are paramount.
And this is exactly where those insights from our previous deep dive on marketing become so critical, right?
Yeah.
As we explored then, platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp aren't just optional marketing tools in Sudan. They often serve as the entire business infrastructure.
Exactly. They are your storefront, your customer service hub, your communication channel, sometimes even how you coordinate payments indirectly. The ability to connect directly with customers, build trust through visible testimonials and reviews on Facebook pages, and leverage those local micro-influencers we talked about. That's paramount, especially when traditional advertising is limited or just doesn't resonate.
And Facebook is trusted, you said, more than websites.
Generally, yes. Because it's conversational, people see real interactions, real people behind the business. It feels more tangible, it's free, it's accessible even on lower bandwidth, and it's ideal for building that community and showcasing social proof. And WhatsApp Business is huge for direct communication, sharing product catalogs easily, and providing that personalized customer service, which is often overwhelmingly preferred.
And we talked about video too, TikTok and Reels, for potentially going viral.
Yes. Short, highly localized video content works incredibly well. Using Sudanese dialect, incorporating local humor, referencing shared cultural points that resonates deeply and can spread organically much faster than generic content.
And crucially, don't forget offline.
Absolutely not. Given the digital divide and the sheer importance of personal connections and trust, offline strategies like distributing flyers in relevant neighborhoods, simple word-of-mouth marketing, and even partnerships with local vendors or community groups remain essential. The key is often to use offline methods to drive people to your online presence, like your Facebook page or WhatsApp number. It's all about meeting your customer where they are, with local nuance and genuine connection.
Okay, so marketing is sorted, using this blend of digital and offline hyper-localized strategies. What about actually managing the money and the tools needed to run the business day to day in this restrictive environment? I imagine international payments are still a nightmare.
The limitations in international payments are indeed severe. Things we take for granted, like easily using PayPal or international credit cards like Visa for business services, are often difficult or completely unavailable for Sudanese businesses.
So how do payments actually happen?
Mostly, it relies on cash transactions, or increasingly, local bank transfer apps and mobile money platforms. Things like Bangkok, Faisal Pay, Sudani Cash, or MTN Momo are the common ways people move money locally.
So very localized payment systems.
Very. And critically, you absolutely must budget extremely carefully for ongoing inflation and the volatility of currency devaluation. Prices can change rapidly. What costs X last month might cost significantly more this month.
Constant financial vigilance needed.
Constant. And in terms of funding operations, as we discussed, self-funding, maybe small-scale crowdfunding within local networks, and investment from family remain the predominant sources of capital. And because access to paid international software as a service, cloud-based tools for accounting, project management, etc., is often blocked by payment issues, there's a heavy reliance on free and open source tools. Things like Notion, Google Docs, Canva, maybe free tiers of other software. These become essential operational tools.
So it's about being incredibly resourceful with limited tools and unpredictable finances. How does a startup scale effectively in such an environment? It sounds like that rapid burn cash, Silicon Valley style scaling just isn't feasible or wise.
You're absolutely right. Scaling smartly in Sudan means doing it slowly and adaptively. Forget blitzscaling. You should be continuously reinventing or tweaking your offerings based directly on user behavior and feedback. What worked yesterday might need adjusting tomorrow.
And geographically, just focus on Khartoum.
Not necessarily. Exploring underserved regions beyond Khartoum cities like Madani, Port Sudan, or Niala can actually open up significant new markets and potentially face less competition than in the capital. It requires understanding those local contexts too, of course. And partnerships become really important for scaling.
Partnerships? With who?
Maybe with established NGOs working in certain areas, or local cooperatives, or even networks of small, trusted vendors. These kinds of collaborations can help you extend your reach and impact without needing massive capital outlays for your own infrastructure. The mantra really is to scale with deep local understanding and collaboration, not just raw capital.
And finally, a key piece of advice for any entrepreneur anywhere: but it sounds especially crucial in Sudan. Keep learning and keep connecting.
Absolutely fundamental. Joining local startup communities networks like 249 startups or maybe initiatives linked to the Khartoum Innovation Center, when active and attending events, whether they're happening offline or virtually, is invaluable. Getting support, sharing experiences, finding collaborators in an environment that can shift so rapidly and dramatically, continuous learning and strong, authentic connections are truly your lifelines.
This brings us, inevitably, to the ultimate, most devastating test for any startup anywhere, but particularly for this nascent ecosystem: conflict. What has been the impact of the civil war that erupted in Sudan in May 2023? We've painted a picture of a fragile but growing scene. This sounds like an existential threat.
It has been nothing short of devastating. The Civil War has effectively decimated an ecosystem that was slowly but surely gaining traction and finding its footing. Many promising startups have had their operations completely disrupted, forced to pivot dramatically just to survive or even cease operations entirely, and many founders have been forced to consider painful migration.
The human stories behind these business disruptions must be incredibly powerful and often tragic. Can you give us some concrete examples of how Sudanese startups reacted when the conflict hit?
Yeah, the responses show incredible, almost unbelievable resilience and adaptation. Take DataQ, for instance. They were primarily a research and data platform. On the third day of the Civil War, they completely pivoted. They stopped their core business and launched NIDA, which means call for help in Arabic.
NIDA, call for help. What did you do?
It became a platform connecting those in desperate need, people needing food, medicine, money, or safe rides out of conflict zones, with volunteers and resources available to help. They put their entire commercial business on hold to serve their community in crisis.
That's incredible. Just wow. A profound testament to that problem-solving ethos, born out of the most dire necessity.
Truly. Then there's Tierhall, which was a VC-backed ride-hailing startup, quite established. During the initial chaos, they reduced their commissions to zero to make rides more affordable for people fleeing. And they used an interactive map of safe routes, actually developed by Sudanese scientists, to help facilitate the evacuation of thousands of people, using their tech for humanitarian ends.
Amazing. Using their platform for evacuation.
But not all could adapt like that. Another ride-hailing app, Sujimac, saw its operations cease entirely. Its founder reported exploring relocating to Egypt because the roads became too dangerous, gas was scarce, and Khartoum felt like a ghost city. The basic infrastructure needed for his business just vanished.
These aren't just business challenges. These are literally life-or-death situations for the founders, their employees, their users. The level of adaptation or the inability to adapt must be immense.
Precisely. Take Awab Habiballah, the founder of Delivery, a fleet management system. His SaaS product was severely impacted by the constant internet outages, which became widespread. He noted that the whole pricing mechanism of the economy is completely out of whack, rendering his business model basically unworkable in the current climate. He, too, expressed plans to leave the country.
And what about those ventures that had maybe secured funding or approvals just before the conflict?
It's heartbreaking. Promising ventures like Bloom, a fintech company which had successfully raised $6 million not long before, obviously severely affected. Or Teregi, a digital trucking platform that had secured VC commitment and government approvals, effectively non-existent in Sudan now. Its founder is hoping to eventually relaunch the concept, maybe from Dubai.
So this leads to that inevitable tragic brain drain you mentioned.
Exactly. Talented founders, experienced teams. Many are forced to migrate, seeking safety and stability elsewhere. That loss of human capital is a massive blow to the ecosystem's future potential, on top of the immediate destruction.
It's hard to even comprehend the scale of disruption. So, despite all this devastation, is there still a glimmer of that unwavering entrepreneurial spirit we talked about? Or has it finally been crushed by the conflict?
You know, what's truly inspiring, almost defiant, is the resilience and the stubborn optimism you still hear from some founders. Even amid such profound disruption and personal loss, some still look at the Sudanese landscape and say it's full of inefficiencies and pain, which is the core of a solution.
Seeing opportunity even in the rubble.
Yes, they view it, perhaps optimistically, as a virgin market that will be ripe for re-entry once stability eventually returns. They believe that the fundamental need for solutions for transport, for finance, for communication, for basic goods will remain, maybe even amplified, providing fertile ground for reconstruction and new ventures when the time is right.
That perspective is incredibly powerful. So, wrapping this up, what does all this mean for us listening to this? This deep dive into Sudanese startups has been incredibly insightful, I think, showcasing both the immense hurdles and that extraordinary human spirit of invention and adaptation.
I agree. The core insights are abundantly clear. The incredible, almost stubborn resilience and ingenuity of Sudanese entrepreneurs. They consistently find ways to innovate despite daunting challenges within a highly complex, often fragmented, and now war-torn business environment.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the critical, though often fragmented and now severely tested, role of support organizations, local communities, and even international aid in trying to keep embers glowing amidst profound conflict.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
That entrepreneurship isn't just about economic growth figures or fancy tech disruption. At its heart, especially in places like Sudan, it's about survival. It's about community, and it's about that fundamental human capacity to adapt and overcome, sometimes against truly impossible odds.
Absolutely. Understanding these dynamics in Sudan, I think, offers profound lessons on adaptability, on creative problem solving, and on community-driven innovation that are genuinely applicable far beyond its borders. These are universal human stories playing out in an extreme context.
Which leads to a final thought, perhaps. This raises an important question for all of us, for you listening. In an increasingly interconnected world, which is also increasingly unstable in many regions, where might the next unexpected frontier for digital entrepreneurship emerge?
Good question.
And what unique challenges and opportunities will it present for those who dare to build in those tough environments? Consider how these insights into Sudan's startups seem the resilience, the necessity-driven innovation, the importance of community might help us anticipate, maybe even support, the next wave of global innovation. Because often, it seems, it's born out of sheer necessity and incredible, incredible resilience.
A thought definitely worth mulling over.
Indeed. Something to think about until our next deep dive.